In terms of personal abuse, has it been horrible? Yeah. Has it been warranted? Some of it, possibly. A lot of it, no. Does it affect you? Yeah. A bit like when I, sort of decided to become a journalist. I had it was Gianni Palladini was sniffing around the club, and I thought, obviously he was involved at QPR. I mean, like I say, football's a bit of a village, and you're speaking to people about, the people behind, Lopez and Richardson and whatever, and the people that they wanted to put in as, and you ring, and people are saying, this is true, so-and-so's your club, and but don't touch him in the bar, that's not a good thing. And an arrangement whereby Peter Panu got a set amount of commission for doing the deal.
Welcome to the podcast, B2B Business Club Series 3. Our guest today, journalistic juggernaut, Neil Moxley. How you doing?
Morning, guys, you're all right?
Mate. How are you today?
Good,
Good weather?
feeling good, apart from the weather, yeah. We're cooking on gas, we're good.
So you are a pride rummy, football fan, cricket fan, sports journalist of how many years?
Oh, more than I care to remember. Probably 33, 34 now. So, been very blessed, very lucky to have done the job I've done, really.
Yep. So for anyone that might not know who you are, would you like to give us a little brief introduction?
Yeah, I'm basically a third generation journalist to cover the fortunes of Birmingham City Football Club. My granddad HD, my dad John, and now me. We've chronicled the ups and downs of Birmingham City for the last probably about 75 years, I think, to be honest. So and I've done it. I've been around here for most of my journalistic life. I started off in the Solihull Times and News Report, and then I went over to the Black Country on a group of 3 weekly papers. And then I got a break went on to the Sunday Mercury and started covering the big teams. Then I got a job covering the Villa for the Mail, for the Birmingham Mail. I couldn't get past Colin Tatham, could I? To be honest with you, that was never going to happen. So I covered the Villa for a bit, and then went on the National. So worked for the Daily Star, worked for the Daily Star in the North East. That was fun, and came back freelance for a bit, and then got a gig with the Daily Mail where I was for 15 years, and I've just moved to the Sunday People to be their chief sports writer. But I've always retained a healthy interest in Midlands football. Last couple of years, did a bit of Midlands football for the Daily Mirror. And here we are today, a new chapter. So looking forward to it.
You touched on there. I've read on your notes. Was it 96, 97 time that you were covering Villa? How was it keeping like a professional neutrality to covering them? Because they were doing quite well around that time as well, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, my dad was also used to write Blues News, obviously the Blues programme. He used to write Villa's News and Record as well, which was the Villa programme. So, there was a few people that thought, oh, well, we know the name, so it must be a Villa fan type of thing. Sadly, not for them. But, these days, I don't think you get away with it because, the newspapers and social media guys want you to, now you get a bit more kudos, I think, with the fan base if you know your colours firmly to the mast. So I don't think I got away with it. But, it was a good time to cover the club, really. They were doing well under Brian Little, who also knew my dad. So, yeah, you never wanted them to be that successful. Losing in semi-finals of the FA Cup was, a blow for them at the time. But, there's a part of you still that probably at that age that's, sort of thinking, oh, well, shame on to the next one. But, they did, I think I was covering the club the last time they won a trophy. So, but, it was good times over there. But we haven't come here to talk about them, have we?
No, most certainly not. So your dad and your granddad were journalists also then. So was it always something that you wanted to kind of follow the family trade, or did you fall into it? Or
not really. I mean, not really. I mean, I sort of went and did my degree and went to work for management consultancy, and then sort of decided after 6 months, I don't really fancy this. And I went as a fan. I've been a Blues fan since 1976, so I've been a Blues fan far longer than I've been a journalist, as you would expect. My first game was Blues derby in 1976, and Kenny Burns scored 4 in a 5-1 win. So I thought, this is good. Clearly,
as well, I know. Kenny Burns.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then I thought, this is good. Clearly a club going places. Yeah. So yeah, sadly not. It's 7 years late. So 7 years later, they were losing to Altrincham also, weren't they? Or what? No, yeah, whatever it was. So yeah, we. Sorry, where was I? I've lost myself there.
Yes, he went to the management.
Yeah, went to management consultancy. I worked there for about 6 months, and then in fact, I went to watch England play actually in Poland. Had a horrible journey out there. Stayed in Prague for 3 days. Got the overnight train from Prague to Wrocław. Changed at Wrocław to get to Poznan. Got off the train. Got chased all around Poznan by a load of Polish loons. It was throwing it down with rain all day. Didn't have anywhere to stay. In fairness, you know, I managed to blag my way into somebody's room. There's a Blues fan that helped us out from Cheltenham, strangely. But anyway, he helped us out, and it was that night at the game. We were standing there at a pretty crap sort of, you know, half hungover, you know, pretty crap journey. Chased all around Poznan, and I saw the journalists getting off a bus. And they'd all got the suits on, they got the briefcases, and they got dropped right outside the front door. I thought, that might be a bit more to my liking.
Your whole journey.
Basically, I went back, sort of resigned. I just about managed to get on an accredited course just in time. My granddad had been president of the union, so during the war, so that had given me a bit of kudos with my application, I think. And I just about squeezed onto it, and then basically sort of, you know, I really didn't have any cash at the time. I was on the uppers, so you know, I went up to Sheffield, and then got offered a job at the Solihull Times, and the rest they say is history. So it was I think I was sort of denying it to myself, really, what I wanted to do, but you know, I think so, and I think, you know, people have sort of said, because of the job you do, you know, what advice would you give? And I'd say to people, follow your dream, do something you really want to do. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, but try and make sure it sort of accompanies your skill sets in life. If you don't like the sight of blood, don't become a doctor. Do you know what I mean? If you don't like animals, or particularly care, you may not become a vet. You know, if you're not good at, you know, with maths, you know, it sort of follows to me. And I've always enjoyed people, and I've always enjoyed writing. So and I've always enjoyed sport. So it's sort of that's sort of how it came to be, really.
You moved quite quickly, didn't you, through your career, early doors, so through the Black Country into the Mercury, to the Mail. How did that kind of work? You get phone calls, so did you see you writing and like what you see? Or
yeah, I mean, it's just sort of like, you know, the way you carry yourself, your writing, your way of stories, your way you carry, you know, your way you perform in press conferences, how you are around people. You know, I suppose all those things are, you know, qualities you look for in a journalist. I mean, all you've got at the end of the day is your relationships with people. You know, so the top and bottom of it is, if you carry yourself well and aren't bothered about putting your foot in the door, and, you know, having a standing your ground and pushing and pulling back and accepting what people say, and, you know, and like I say, you have to exercise a fair amount of discretion in this job as well. So it's been you know, there's no real blueprint for it. You just have to sort of like roll with the punches as they come at you, to be perfectly honest with you. But over time, you know, your experience sort of like, you'll hear a story and you think, do you know what, I'm better off staying out of that one. Well, that's for another day. We'll part that, and if there's a chance to do it, we'll do it. But if there's not, we won't. So, you know, as time goes on, you get a little bit more wise to the fact that there is another day in journalism, and that you can keep your powder dry. And you know,
so these bits like sales, isn't it? You have to be a bit like thick-skinned to like take the nose to get the yeses, and kind of be persistent and be likeable and have that kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying, you know, I'm not putting myself necessarily forward as likeable and all the rest of it, but there are certain qualities. You know, if you're scared of asking questions and
timid
and you're not gonna get the best out of people, are you? So, you know, top and bottom of it is that you nurture relationships you've got. I mean, I've got some relationships that go back 30 odd years with people in football, you know, so you'd like to think that given the longevity of those, you've done something right. So yeah, I mean, like I say, I've just had a fantastic career up until this point, so we're looking forward to the next chapter.
We're talking now where you mentioned exclusives. So what is kind of like your proudest exclusive that stands out for you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's been loads over the years, but I mean, there was one with Derby when there was an internal investigation into the drinking habits of one of the managers, and that sort of ended in his downfall, sadly. But it probably was a story that needed to be told. It wasn't me that was carrying out the investigation; it was the club. So yeah, I reported on that, and I know it might have upset people at the time again at Derby, but it was a true story, and you know, and eventually there was a part in the ways, not because of it, but I think that was one of them in terms of blues. Oh, blimey, I don't know where to start. Some of them have been good, most of them have been bad, some of them have been slightly offbeat.
But there are a few around Barry Fry's time, weren't there?
Yeah, Barry was just ace. Barry was just wonderful. I mean, I saw him on Friday, you know, at dinner, and he's still the same. But he's, you know, he's just wonderful. I mean, the first I reminded him of it actually on Friday. We went out, and our first time I met him was when I was on the Sunday Mercury, and he called me into his office, and there was it was at the Sedgemoor actually at the time, and it said, "Do not come through this door by order unless you've got the manager's permission." Well, he'd stormed through the door, and I know there was obviously famously there was a cast of thousands of players, and I knew John Franks. I played football with him, and I knew Paul Tate because obviously I've said in the past my first girlfriend was in his class at school, and they're looking at me, and I'm standing there under the sign, and Barry's marched onto his office, and he opens the door and gives me an absolute dressing down. I can't say the words on a public podcast, but you can probably imagine that. And I've shamefaced wandered in there with a red face and all the rest of it. And he said, "Neil, you know, I'm talking to myself for the last 30 seconds. Come on." So yeah, but Barry was brilliant. And the first story I got was from Barry about, you know, Gary Paul, interesting Leeds, I think it was, or whatever. But it was sufficient at the time to get me a back page story on the Mercury. And Barry just knows how to play the game. He just knows what you want, and he knows what the oxygen is, and he's fabulous.
He's doing it now, and he'll be the poker.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So,
yeah,
365 clubs interested in him.
Yeah,
the blues kind of thing, isn't it?
Well, yeah, clearly, but yeah, never knowingly undersold, was he? I mean, like, he just had loads. I mean, Barry was just great. You know, we'd walk into press conferences afterwards. He goes, I remember one game after Sheffield United lost at home 2-0, and he walked in. He's going, "Gentlemen, my fault. I played a team of dwarfs today," and I was like, "Barry, you can't really say that, mate, to be honest." But you know, can't just, you know. And again, another one, we went to Blackburn for a League Cup tie. I think we drew 1-1 actually. I think it was about the time when we got a decent team in the top of the third division. And a guy from Red Rose Radio, which is the commercial radio station up there, decided to stick his microphone in to what was a briefing afterwards, really, for Tom Ross, Tats, myself, one or two others. And Barry didn't realise that Barry didn't realise he was speaking to in public. Yeah, so it was peppered with ifs, you know. So it was just peppered with expletives, and this bloke's face just went claret, and just away he went. I made his excuses, but yeah, Barry was great fun.
How hard is it to get an exclusive these days with the amount of faff and stuff around?
But you know,
you just have to go with your source.
Yeah, you just have to go with the people you speak to and the trust you built up, and you know, you'll try and second source.
Like rife, isn't it? With
yeah, but you'd be surprised. I mean, you know, the amount of people that actually know what's going on. You know, again, you know, that can be a source of stories for you, to be honest. Oh, that sounds right, or I've heard that one, or you know, so there might be something in that one. I'll look into that. You know, so it is a source of stories. You've just, like I say, you've got a social media. You've got to roll with the punches a little bit, to be honest with you, and sort out the wheat from the chaff and have a filter, and then basically, you know, move with the times. And like I say, phone the clubs are somewhat helpful. You know, you'll phone up. You know, shall I set the hairs running on this one? No, leave it. You know, they'll give you a bit of a steer. So sometimes, so you know, it's you know, it cuts both ways. If you've got if you are a trusted voice, they'll try and help you out, because they don't want their support base jumping up and down. I mean, you know, Blues will get linked with hundreds of players, you know, but you want there to be something in it, don't you? Well, I do before I put my name to it. Do you know what I mean? So that's where we are. It can be a source of stories, but it's also a source of frustration, obviously.
The talking of obviously Barry Fry in that era, I'd read in one of your interviews that you'd been threatened on multiple occasions by Karen Brady.
Yeah.
Over your stories.
Yeah.
Was that just a Blues thing, or did that extend to West Ham? Or?
No, it was just Blues. I mean, the famous one was I wrote a story about Jermaine Pennant turning up a bit worse than the wear for training. Unfortunately, Bostills at the time used to be used Sunday morning to play football. So normal Sunday morning football teams used to, and somebody I knew was playing football, and he said literally just seen Jermaine Pennant crawl out of a cab. He's not in the, and he's not in a great shape. So so chased it up. Turns out to be true. Wrote it, and my phone goes at 7:20 the next morning at home. I still to this day don't know how she got my phone number. There's so few people who've got it. So phone goes, hello, how much is your house worth? Sorry, who is this? You know it is. How much is your house worth? What's that got to do with anything? Well, I'll tell you what's got to do with anything. You'll be living in a cardboard box by the time I finish with you. Bang, phone goes down. Oh, Jesus, okay. Could be in a bit of trouble here. So you leave it, that was at 7:20. You leave it till whatever each time you think is right, and you phone up the person who's told you and said, you are right about this, aren't you? Because like I've just, there could be all sorts of stuff coming down the rail track at me. And the bloke just laughed and put the phone down. So at the end of the day, it was true. We put it out there. It was true.
All right,
I'd second sourced it. I knew it was okay. So I got banned here for 2 years for a riot that. For a riot, it was effectively, I think we lost to Blackburn and we'd gone down under Steve Bruce.
Yeah. And
it kicked off afterwards. I think there's a few punters tried to get Sullivan and gold, and I was blamed for that one and banned for 2 years for that. So it was basically me saying, and I still stick to my guns, that they didn't really back Steve as much as Steve Bruce as much as they should have in the January transfer window. It was the year when Chris Sutton came, I think. Yeah. I got banned to 2 years for that. So listen, it is what it is. You roll with the punches. Yeah, but to be fair to Sullivan, he didn't mind me paying for a ticket. I could come. I just couldn't use the press facilities. So they were happy to take the money. So there won't be any surprise there. But I mean, look, I like Karen, and I got on, and she did a good job for the football club. I mean, it was good for her as well. Gave her a platform, and I'm pleased she's gone on to bigger and better things. I don't hold any grudges. Life's too short, and let's crack on. She said a piece.
So any managers down here that were a bit pensive around you? How'd you get on with Cottrell and?
I got on okay with Steve. Yeah, I got on okay with Steve. Yeah,
any managers that thought, well, I'm not giving you anything, kind of, or not really?
I think they sort of. I think it's. Like Alex McLeish came to my 40th birthday party, so I got on well with Steve, got on well with Alex, got on well with Chris Hughton. I gave him a bit of grief on social media, and that's one I've got wrong when he turned up. So I have to apologise and roll back from that one. Gary Monk I wasn't massively keen on to start with. But again, I get on fine with him now. He's sort of like, we've chatted and all the rest of it. So there's not a problem with Gary. Pet was fine. I didn't really see eye to eye with Aitor Karanka, but I don't think anybody did really, to be honest.
Zola, how much to do that?
I was a bit anti-Zola because I just knew that I got on really well with Garry Rowett. Felt sorry for him. Didn't think he should have been sacked. Still don't think he should have been sacked. Again, it's part of the chaos of football. We live, eat, breathe, it, and other people who've just come late to the party don't, so they might not understand the nuances of it as much.
Yeah.
Let's be kind and say that. And that decision was made. And it was just the wrong decision. Asking a set of players to perform, in the way he wanted them to was never gonna, because Blues at that time weren't that team, just like they weren't when Wayne Rooney was asked to do. Just similar under John Eustace, and I think most people who could take a step back from that would realise that, and don't be under any illusion of, I sort of downplay it a little bit, but before Rooney comes in, you've done your homework as to exactly what went on at DC United and Derby. You've learned that with a bit of experience. So I just
still
thought
walks into Plymouth after.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Same.
Yeah, but again, so listen, I don't really, I don't really know in terms of, it's a question for them. I think I've been fair with pretty much all of them. I might have been unfair on a couple of occasions. No Man's an Island, pull my hand up, but I've got on all right with pretty much all of them, I think.
Yeah. So talking of the ownership, obviously fantastic time to head for Blues now. Darker days in the past, the Chinese ownership. Can I run through a couple of different points and just have a comment regarding the previous ownership? So nothing too controversial. So Carson Yeung, our owner, allegedly Jackie Chan's hairdresser. Was he actually a villain, or was he a little bit gullible and he was a bit of more of a victim in regards to the ownership and what he bought, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think he was a pawn in a bigger game, to be honest with you. He was the front man for whatever was going on in Hong Kong. You know, the courts have decided that he should suffer a punishment for it. But if you want my honest opinion, I think there was a bigger play. I think perhaps at the time the financial regulations surrounding football weren't as rigorous as they could have been, and I think that was the reason why people decided to invest in an English football club. And I think he was just pretty much the fall guy, really. We didn't actually have a lot to do with him because he couldn't speak much English.
Wow.
So I think, you know, we're sitting in a box here at St Andrews, and I think, you know, it's probably not a million miles away from where he held his first press conference. And he was pretty much done via an interpreter. He couldn't really speak a lot of English, so you know we didn't get the opportunity to actually quiz him on anything because because he was never here and we never saw him. So it was all you know, to say anybody to say they had a relationship with him other than, you know, journalistically, I don't think it's true. But you know, top and bottom of it, I think he was a bit of a fool guy, to be honest. You know, I don't. Listen, if he was doing wrong, then he got his punishment and he deserves it. But I don't think in himself he was necessarily a bad guy. It's just the way that a lot of the fallout from his ownership days, you know, it all stems back from that, doesn't it? Really, to be honest. So the knock-on effect for blues and blues fans means we had, you know, 12, 13 years of absolute chaos. Really, to be honest, that's the nicest way of putting it, I think.
It's a little bit, do you find it's a little bit kind of a juxtaposition with that period of our time being our most successful period for winning the cup, getting to Europe? So you had this cloud, but at the same time, we were having like the best time in our lifetimes on the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, but I think there's always a lag. I think there's a lag between certain managers. You know, I used to use David Moyes as an example at Everton. So David Moyes, puts into place a really, really structured Everton team over a number of years. Everybody knew what they were about. Then he goes to Manchester United. Roberto Martinez comes in, who's a little bit more laissez-faire. But some of the old traits and habits and discipline and structures that Moyes had got in place, you know, in Martinez's first season, he absolutely shone with Everton. Mainly, I think, because there's a bit of a lag, bit of a hangover, positive hangover. And it doesn't say it's like an oxymoron. But the foundations are good. So I still think that for a while the foundations were still pretty solid at Blues. And then obviously as time goes on, where, you know, he's being asked to make his own decisions and he's listening to the wrong agents, and you know, there's never been an agent on planet Earth who's trying to sell a bad player into a football club. So you have to bear that in mind. But obviously, again, like I say, English football's nuanced. You need to know these things. These people aren't your best friends.
Yeah.
You know, they need to be kept at arm's length, and you need to make your own decisions on players and then involve agents rather than agents come to you and say, oh, I've got such and such for you, or I've got so and so. You know, you need to be able to make that, you know, take that step backwards, and not all owners, and there's English football's littered with them. It's not just the Blues, you know, have been able to do that. So.
Yeah. So I've seen on some of your articles, obviously you've covered Newcastle, Everton. How is it seeing other clubs' ownership models and kind of seeing similar predicaments for Premier League clubs, and then seeing kind of having to deal with it down here at Blues? How do you find that then, picking out the similarities in the issues that they've got?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, it goes cross-club, doesn't it? You know, you can change the name over the door, but some of the problems are still the same. I mean, Newcastle's fans had an issue with Mike Ashley. You know, Ashley was very similar, to my mind, to David Sullivan. So he wanted, you know, Newcastle United run as a going concern. He always paid the bills. There was never any danger of it getting into any financial trouble for a couple of reasons. A, he would never allow that to happen. And B, if it did, he had the wherewithal to drag them clear of the danger. And I always felt that there was similarities in the way Ashley ran his football club and David Sullivan. Now that may not suit the agendas of most football club supporters, who basically say, spend loads of money on my football club.
Well, this is constantly jumping on this on TalkSport, isn't he, about
full stop,
because he's put his hands in his pocket. He's very pro owners, isn't he?
Yeah.
People saying, well, why don't they put, why doesn't Jim Ratcliffe put another 300 million in, 400 million in? and it's not the case if you just pump money out your own pocket. No one wants penny out their own pocket anymore, do they? It's
Bad penny after bad penny sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you have to know when to stop. You know, Simon's, I mean, if you've read his book and you realise that there is a certain degree of naivety, he won't be saying this probably, but I like Simon. But, you know, we've had chats in the past. But I think he was a bit naive. I mean, he gave Neil Warnock pulled a trick. Neil Warnock pulled a trick on him, didn't he? Say he wasn't pulled a trick on him, but you know, sort of said, "Who's the best manager in the Championship?" to Simon Jordan, and Jordan went, "Well, you are." He said, "Well, why am I paid like the best manager in the Championship?" Ooh, okay. So and Jordan, and you know, Simon, you know, details that little thing in his, you know, chapter in his own book. But you know, football's an inexact science, isn't it? Really, to a certain extent. You know, what is it? It's good manager, good player, good recruitment team. What defines good? Well, results define good. That's it.
So so our previous ownership again. So Wren building himself an office at training ground while Garry Monk was there, so we could watch training, be more involved. How was that handled? Do you think that was the kind of correct handling with Monk? And
no, well, I mean, you know, like chief executives shouldn't really get involved with that side of thing. It's not their bag, is it? Their bag is to sort out strategy, sort out the marketing, sort out ticketing, sort out the corporates. You know, the football people have to be left to get on with the football side of things. And Dong playing, you know, Championship football manager probably wasn't, you know, helpful to Garry Monk, really, to be honest with you, or whoever it was that happened to, or Aitor Karanka, or whoever it was that happened to be sort of in charge of the football side of things. Again, it just sort of feeds into the narrative that the club was in a bit of a downward spiral, a bit of a vortex. You don't see, I didn't see David Gill doing it with that, looking over Sir Alex Ferguson's shoulders at Manchester United. I don't think that would have lasted too long, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't see cheeky Begiristan looking over Pep Guardiola's shoulders at the Etihad. It just, you know.
It's just underlining, isn't it? I think it's a trust thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think, you know, but you wouldn't get ask your managing director to go and do your marketing campaign, would you?
No.
It's like,
no. Why would you ask your football manager to go and read through a latest set of accounts and flag up one or two issues that he got from reading it? I mean, he just
say, but he'd have had a game, wouldn't he, with them accounts?
Yeah, well, if he could have tracked them down, yeah.
Okay, so what about Edward Cheng inviting a fan onto the car park for a fight?
Yeah, yeah. Let's put it like this: he would have got one.
Yeah.
Whether win or lose, he would have got one from our supporters. Absolutely no question about that.
Wrong place to be offering.
Yeah, it wasn't the greatest course of action, was it?
You're wrong about that. Come back.
Well, no. I'm a lover, not a fighter. I'm not really good at that either. No, it's not. No. But again, you know, you receive phone calls from people sort of out of the blue, sort of saying, "What are you writing that for?" Excuse me, what are you writing that for? And back off. And yeah, I've had one or two of those over the years. That's you know, you don't hear about that, do you? See, but again, bark and bite.
And you don't mind it with Cheng. You don't mind it to a certain extent. That okay, it's passionate, and you can look at it one side to the other. Really, that Cheng's kind of like but not in that way. Do you know what I mean? There's a way of.
Yeah, I mean, look, football club employees feel it more than supporters, because you know it's their 9 to 5, their livelihoods are on the line. You know,
it was a supporter that actually started that, wasn't it? Because there'd been a jokey thing, something had happened somewhere with a football owner and a fan, hadn't it? And a Blues fan dropped on and said, "Oh, maybe we should do this," and so we hadn't gone looking for it.
Yeah. I mean, and so you know, we're in football is unique because it inflames passions in people that you know just normal standards of society just go out the window, don't they? You know, and you know, for better or worse, it's the greatest game on earth. But top and bottom of it is that a lot of people have got their livelihoods involved in this, so they do feel it. And when they get criticism, they're not going to like it. And you know, sometimes I think people may lose sight of that. And sometimes, you know, in the past, I didn't perhaps realise how deeply people at football clubs felt. But you know, so I understand his reaction to a certain extent. I'm not saying it was right, but I understand why he was annoyed, because you know, sometimes people are working with false bits of information or incomplete bits of information, and like just have a go at you, and it's difficult to keep your emotions in check.
Just following on from that a little bit, just jumping forward, but we'll go back Twitter for you, and we discussed it a little bit off camera, and obviously just you've had a bit of trouble with it. I say a bit of trouble. It's been the bane of your life a little bit. How do you now deal with that to try and stay professional, and how do you not turn into, joking aside, how do you not turn into Edward Cheng where you're like, who are you talking to?
Yeah, I mean, a variety of different people you speak to. It's just like, the pub conversations that, Twitter's basically a pub conversation that now finds its way into the public arena. That's the way I sort of view Twitter. In terms of personal abuse, has it been horrible? Yeah. Has it been warranted? Some of it, possibly. A lot of it, no. Does it affect you? Yeah, I would say it does, in terms of it affects what you're prepared to put out there and give to people. You're not as giving. You're not as, you're a bit more guarded as to what you say and how you say it, which is a shame really, because I'm quite an open book. I tend to think, I used to engage in quite, detailed conversations with people, and if people came on were civil with me, I'll be civil back. But just reading, and to be honest, I got half of it. I was the bearer of bad news relentlessly. I got threatened by Dong over the, the stadium repair story. For publishing that. So do people want to know about that, or do people not want to know about that? I took the decision that they did, and in the end it turned out I got, I put £1 million worth of repairs, and in the end it's turned out to be probably 10 times that. And so was I right? Yeah. Did it give me a great deal of joy writing it? No. If people are at home thinking I enjoy writing negative stories about Birmingham City, nothing could be further from the truth, for two reasons. A, it's my own football club, and B, journalistically, it's much, much easier to write about a winning football club than it is than a losing one. So, I've got, you sort of develop a bit of a defence mechanism really. So I put out what I want to put out, and I'm a bit less engaged now with people, which is a shame, because I can develop points that of interest for them, or say the reason that won't happen is because of this, or the reason they're not looking in that direction because of this. But I won't do it anymore, because I think it's
kind of blurring the lines between professional and personal to a certain.
Well, it is, when it's only got to take somebody to say, you're talking rubbish in not so many words, and you're this and you're that and you're the other, and you don't want to tar everybody with the same brush. But when it's the sort of invective, I mean, like, it was a pile on. I found out about Tony Mowbray's illness and got a boatload of grief for that, but putting it out, absolute boatload, and I absolutely accept that I shouldn't have done it in the way I did. So yeah, I'm hands up. I was alright to talk about it. Well, it was coming out. So in fact, I actually think the club put it out before I did, although it was a matter of minutes. So so there was that one, and there was a piece of news I put out about the Fulham, the final day of the season. I think it was talking about, again, punishment. I think it was a points punishment or something, had we lost. My own brother still thinks I got that wrong. My two brothers, massive Blues fans, and the little one, he's just not having it. He said you shouldn't have done it. He said it didn't capture the mood of the moment. And I sort of said, well, I got a story. I was writing it on Sunday. Sure, I left it for the Monday after we won, didn't we? Stayed up. It was a good day, wasn't it? I don't know. I was working for a Sunday paper at the time, so do I get everything right? No. Is there is it an exact science? No. I apologise if I've upset anybody over the particular timings of the stories stuff, but over the course of 20 odd years, I think my record stands up against most. I've got a lot more right than I've got wrong. And if I've taken umbrage, if people are upset by anything.
And you're thinking about the impact of your club, aren't you? Really, but deep down, I mean, it's not. I feel like it's not getting the mood. But you can't always.
Is it easier reporting on other teams? Is it easier to speak on Everton, Newcastle?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think it is. Yeah. Because you're not so emotionally involved in it and invested in it. Twice, I've taken people in to try and buy the football club, and that takes a lot of time and effort, and trips down to, for 2 or 3 trips down to London for meetings and stuff, and, with people that, were genuinely interested in buying the club. You know, once was Peter Pan who got in the way, and the last time was when Jeremy Dale got involved. And so, you know, when you're getting a barrage of abuse for trying to do your job, plus you're trying to help the club by sending in people who are, you know, who you think can purchase it, it's like, you know, it's a very, living in a really strange space, you know. And so I'm actually trying to help the football club. I've taken in 2 people who are concrete that have got the wherewithal to do this, you know, but for a couple of reasons weren't able to. We haven't got enough time on the podcast, really. And then you're sort of writing stories, and then you're getting the negativity. You're like, you do feel, well, what am I doing this for? Because I'm all, you know, I'm trying to help. I can't tell them that I'm trying to help, because it's sort of contrary to my journalistic principles. I can't really break cover on a story I'm involved. Yeah, there's a conflict of interest there.
So is that public knowledge now that you were involved in activities trying to bring these people?
Don't think so. No.
Can we delve into that a little
Pressure.
I think Daniel Ivory's talked about one of them in his Leak Up and Haircuts book. You know, that you know, one of the guys, you know, I'd rather not, actually, but you know, suffice it to say that.
How close was you?
Well, there was an arrangement whereby Peter Panu got a set amount of commission for doing the deal, and I think I think that he fell down on that front. There was that was one problem, and the second one, United came in. So it's the minute the United came in, that the person I was taking in sort of you know, retreated, because United had got, you know, clearly got the wherewithal to do it. So that was great. That was great news for the football club. So,
well, I think I said to you when we met in the pub and stuff that you have been part of that journey, and I know you're not going to say directly, but as Blues fans and stuff, knowing that that is part of the journey, how we've come to fruition now, and how Knighthead has come in, because they knew you was obviously close and taking it over. Thought they probably had to make moves. I don't know.
No, Jeremy Dale did brilliantly. You know, he got the mandate, put together a fantastic presentation pack, deck, whatever you want to call it, that was sufficient to sort of drag Knighthead into the room, into the conversation. So, you know, absolute kudos to him for doing that. You know, he did. You know, he took a risk, because they weren't at the table when he started it, and they came to the table sort of halfway through, and you know, and it's proved to be, you know, what we all really wanted it to be, isn't it? Really, to be honest. I mean, I know the first year in charge, I think they tried to walk before they could run. You know, and it's cost them a fair amount of money to put that right. You know, with respect to sacking John Eustace and bringing in Wayne Rooney and asking him to play a brand of football, that's right, but it was just wrong at the time. And again, I come back to the nuances of it. You know, it's all very well saying these things. Everybody wants to win Premier League and Champions League, but you know, you've got to accept these 40 clubs of similar size to Blues.
And we would love Rooney to do really well.
Yeah, listen,
not as if we wanted him to fail.
No,
Just we quite like John Eustace, and he.
Yeah, and he, you know, I think he deserved. You know, it would have been interesting to see where he is now, because he hasn't failed, has he? You know, he's gone to Blackburn, and they got rid of a 30-goal-a-season striker, and he got them to the fringes of the playoffs. And then he's performed miracles at Derby and managed to get them basically 1.5 points a game since he went there. So the guy knew what he was doing. So yeah, I mean, look, you know, he's been fantastic and good and well done to Jeremy, because you know, it was a hard sell. It was, you know, it was difficult dealing with the Chinese, as pretty much everybody has
still remnants of that now, isn't there? And with
absolutely.
There, it's like, say, the foundations of people that are already in clubs. It takes a while for that to come out, doesn't it?
Yeah, you know, look, I'm full of admiration for the job he's done, and for taking the, you know, for taking the trouble and the time to put a deck together to try and attract investors, and that's ultimately what has got United to the table. And you know, fortunately, they've turned out to be the, you know, they've put the money where their mouth is, haven't they? So good luck. You know, it's fantastic, really.
On a slightly different note, you said you've been compared to Justin Fletcher, aka Mr. Tumble.
Yeah,
you heard about that?
Yeah, my brother's going to be absolutely delighted you mentioned that. Absolutely delighted. I think he's probably made his year, frankly. Yeah, I think I've been told he's put a few more pounds on than me, so I'm going to shy away from that comparison.
Have you ever met him?
No.
Celebrity deathmatch.
No.
be interesting to get his thoughts on it. But yeah, he's he doesn't look so much like
Nothing-
it.
Call him, mate. Call him
Nothing
out.
like it. No.
Like one of the traveller fighting videos.
Yeah.
Do a message. Yeah, so just to again kind of staying with the ownership ups and downs, just for us, the conversation, that infamous conversation between Simon Jordan and Lawrence Bassini on Talk.
Yeah.
How close and how true was what Lawrence was saying regarding Sullivan's backing and what he was doing? Like, how was that to report on for you? And then obviously Richardson and Rodriguez, that was in the mix as well. But how do you take a stance in that as a journalist?
Yeah, again, you know, I mean, I was quite close to Keith Harris's people, you know, his PR people, and you know, they'd assured me that the person coming in was going to be, you know, absolutely blue chip, definitely had the funds, definitely had the, you know, and I again, I talk about, you know, no man's an island, made a mistake, you know, went onto it and put it over, it was done, and it's come back to haunt me and bite me on the backside on numerous occasions. You know, and, you know, people have, you know, still refer to it now, don't they, as your mate Bassini and all this sort of carry on. I didn't know. If I'd known it was Bassini, but, you know, who was fronting it, then there's no way I'd have been as bullish as I was. Absolutely no way. But they told me it was a blue chip. I think they were referring to Sullivan. I think they weren't telling me a lie. I think they were referring to Sullivan. And I think Bassini somehow had got some finance. There was a tie-up between the two somewhere along the line. And that's where it was. You can speculate all you like. I don't know, because I've not spoken to David Sullivan about it.
You think it was something maybe put the feelers out and then the reaction to it is kind of...
I think yeah. I mean, I put the thing out saying it's done, and then I think it was Mac Hughes and Daily Mail the next day wrote it's Lawrence Bassini, and my heart went, oh my God, no, because I knew what Bassini was like from speaking to Graham Taylor, when God rest his soul. When Graham, you know, was at Villa, you know,
Yeah.
you know, he'd obviously previously been at Watford, and I think that might have been one of the reasons why he moved out the second time out of Watford. But top and bottom of it, so I'm like listening to this car crash of an interview, and just thinking, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done here? You know, it was like to say, it was. I mean, I disappeared down a rabbit hole from which there's no escape, and I deserved a kicking at the time, and I got one, and I'm still getting one.
Yeah, well, you still think that.
So yeah, from Mr. Tom, from everyone, yeah, probably he weighs in, yeah.
Justin Fletcher knows Bassini.
Yeah, well, hopefully not. So yeah, I mean, look, I mean, we, it's an interesting one, that, because Sullivan was definitely involved in it, and I just wondered whether or not it was a pet project for his son. But unfortunately, when the cover was blown so early on in it, he could never gain any traction then, because it threw up all sorts of conflicts of interest. You've got a father owning West Ham, you've got a son in charge of, you know, owning Blues. I mean, it's, you know, whether that would have been allowed, that would have been really interesting. But, you know, I just think all of a sudden it became, the whole subject, not helped by that interview, in fairness, sort of became too hot to handle. It just got dropped as soon as it happened. So yeah, you know, you live and you learn, don't you? I won't be doing that again.
It's amazing, because as prevalent as he was, and he was everywhere, and obviously that conversation was kind of the peak of that, wasn't it? And then for him to be gone, you don't really hear of him trying to dip his toes in football ownership anymore, do you? Or does that still trickle to the surface? Your mate.
Rise high.
What do you want me to say?
That's saying. No comment. Absolutely.
His PR company have probably come in and said, you know what, let's just look out of it for a bit.
Yeah.
Let the heat settle on.
Yeah.
So what does the future look like for you? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, well, you know, I've got a few things. Just left the Mirror after 11 years. So probably time for a change, to be honest with you. So top and bottom is I've got something quite exciting hopefully happening shortly. Set up a little company called, we're setting up a little project called Forever Blues with a couple of people you obviously Blues fans all know. So yeah, it's hopefully going to be a bit of a website, news service, podcast. So I might be coming to you, Per, for some tips, to be perfectly honest with you. And if this turns out all right, you never know, do you?
Yeah. You haven't need an intro.
Yeah, absolutely. So you know, we've got that. You know, I'll still be working for national newspapers, still be in the digital space. You know, breaking sports stories, going to matches, hopefully still on behalf of national newspapers, but in a more freelance capacity, and doing bits and pieces still around the game, and hopefully be able to see a bit more of Birmingham City. So because I must be the only Blues fan out there who's seen more of Villa than Blues, in the last 30 years. So, and I'll include Tom Ross in that. So, I'm looking forward to it. Really, it should be good. And I'd just like to say thank you for having me on, and it's really humbling, and I hope people, view this with the honesty and view it, and like hopefully they accept it for me being honest, because it's been a heck of a ride over the last few years. It has to be said.
Fair play to you, mate. Actually, you're right.
It's eye-opening. I had no idea personally that you were so involved intrinsically in that kind of period of time, and that you were doing so much to try and help the club.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say? I mean, I had a bit like when I sort of decided to become a journalist. I had it was on Gianni Palladini was sniffing around the club, and I thought, obviously he was involved at QPR. I mean, like I say, football's a bit of a village, and you're speaking to people about, the people behind, Lopez and Richardson and whatever, and the people that they wanted to put in as, and you ring, and people are saying, this is true, so-and-so's your club, and bar, don't touch him in the bar, that's not a good thing. And so you're hearing all this sort of stuff, and I'm not saying that about Palladini, by the way, but I just thought to myself, is there anybody else out there who can possibly help the football club? And so set into motion a chain of events whereby, you're picking up the phone, they're corralling people that they think might be able to help, putting together business plans, looking at the books, coming in for meetings with the club, it's time consuming, and going down to London, oh my god, and you can't say any of these things publicly. I was doing it on my day off, by the way, to the day now. I was doing it on my days off, but you can't say any of these things publicly. So you do become embroiled in it. But at the top and bottom of it, I was in a position to do something. A lot of people probably weren't. They might have been able to do something. So and ultimately, none of it's come off. But at least I can look myself in the mirror and say I had a go. Do you know what I mean? So
it hasn't come off, but this has happened, hasn't it? Whereas if it hasn't come off and it's ended up with another nameless Chinese company and we're in the hole, kind of probably dig in more, wouldn't it? But
yeah, I mean, look, top. I don't want to denigrate or downplay or anything that Jeremy Dale's done. Absolutely not. He's fantastic, and I've said that, and I've gone on record, and I'm full of admiration for him. I really am. But the person that was taken in wasn't anywhere near the level of Knighthead, but they were plausible, and they'd have done things differently. They haven't got the deepest pocket as Knighthead have. They wouldn't have made the same impact, but the future of the football club would have been secured. So it would be in a better position. It would be in a better position now than it was under the Chinese. It just wouldn't be in this position, as it just wouldn't.
With none of us,
and so that's where we are. But yeah, does it hurt? Yeah. That's the reason I think I felt it more keenly, the abuse and the criticism, because you're trying to help, but you can't say anything. So the first chance really I've had to put my side of the story. So it is what it is.
Hopefully that gives everyone a more balanced view now of kind of you and your involvement, and shines a light on the bigger picture.
Hopefully so. I'll have to. That's for other people to decide, really, isn't it? So they can make up their own minds.
And regarding the Mr. Sumble thing again, people can make their own minds up. I don't think you'll get anything like it. But
thanks, lads. Appreciate that. Cheers. Cheers, boys.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right.